Hi foodies. All right, it's Terry again, and here is our video for the day or for the week. And today we are cooking roasted vegetable and chicken enchiladas. And I promise you this is so easy, and I'm going to teach you how to make an enchilada sauce that is amazing and so much better than what you could get in the store. Maybe even better than what you can get in a restaurant. So come on over here. I'm going to show you what I've got going, okay? And then we'll walk through the ingredients. So I've already roasted my vegetables, and you can see I've got a nice assortment here. I just took some odd and end vegetables that I had in the refrigerator and chopped them up into bite-sized pieces. Now you want to make sure that they're all about the same size, because then they'll cook evenly. If you have something that's bigger than others, then it's going to take longer for it to cook. So I just cut them up, threw them on my oiled baking sheet, and roasted them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then we're just gonna let that cool for a second. All right. Now, while that is cooling, before we assemble, we've got to make our enchilada sauce. Now, this doesn't take very long at all. The longest part of this is measuring out our ingredients, and then we've got to let it bloom just a little bit. Now, in order to make this sauce, we're gonna make a roux. And a roux is basically a flour and oil or fat mixture, and it thickens the sauce. Now this is not going to be a very thick sauce, so it's not going to be like a custard consistency or anything like that. It will coat the back of a spoon, but it's not going to be anything really heavy. Now the key to a roux is to making sure that you cook all of the flour essence out of that. So you're going to let it cook for just a minute until you don't smell that flour anymore. So we're going to warm our pan up. You want it about moderate heat, so I'm going to do about between a 4 and a 5 on my gas. Next, I'm taking a neutral oil. So this is canola oil. You don't want to use anything like olive oil because that's got too much flavor, and it's going to throw off the flavor of our enchilada sauce. So we're going to put this in here, and we're going to let it warm up. Now, I've already measured out my spices over here, and this really helps. If you take the time to measure out your spices, it will save you a lot of cooking time. So that was 3 tablespoons of neutral oil, canola oil, and then I have 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. It doesn't matter if you have all-purpose or self-rising. You just want a good flour. Now we're gonna let this come up until it warms up a little bit. Then we're gonna put our flour in here and let it cook for just a minute. And then we're gonna add our spices before we add our stock. So I'm using chicken broth. If you wanna go vegetarian, you can use a vegetable. I would not use a beef just because the flavor's too strong. So stick with something a little bit lighter, such as vegetable or chicken broth here. All right, so this has come up. We're gonna test it by just throwing a little bit in there. And we want to see that flour just kind of bubble up and foam a little bit. That tells me it's almost at temperature there. All right, I'm going to dump this in there. And then I'm going to whisk it in. And I want all of that oil incorporated into that flour. So we're just going to stir that around. Next, I have a 1/4 cup of chili powder. Now that looks like a lot, but you're gonna need this to flavor your sauce here. So we're gonna cook this out. And I can still smell a little bit of flour, that smell. All right, so in goes my 1/4 cup chili powder. Next, we have a teaspoon of cumin. And if you don't have any of these bowls, get some. They are so valuable. A teaspoon of garlic powder. And I'm not using garlic salt because I will flavor it with some salt at the end. A teaspoon of oregano. And we're going to stir that in. Now, this is going to look kind of dry here, and that's fine because we've got so many spices in here and not enough oil, but that's okay. We want to cook this a little bit. We want to let those spices kind of bloom. So they're going to become fragrant. We don't want them to burn, but we want them to be a little fragrant. So when you start smelling them in the air, then you know you're about done. All right, next I'm going to add my chicken broth. Now this is going to be noisy, so bear with me. We're going to do a little bit at a time and slowly incorporate it into our flour spice mixture. Now when you have spices, dried spices like this, you need to make sure that they are not old. They haven't been sitting in your cabinet for 2 years, 3 years, or however long that you have to dust or wipe the dust off of the container. It's always good to mark when you open and use them within about 6 months, because then they lose their freshness. So I wouldn't go out and buy a large container of a spice that you don't use very often, because then it's just going to go to waste. Make sure that you whisk it and you get all those lumps out, because they'll be hidden in the little crevices down there. And I'm just going to finish up my container here. So this is about 4 cups of chicken broth here I'm adding. And you see we've got that really lovely color there, and that smell in the kitchen smells wonderful. I'm gonna let that cook for a few minutes. I'm gonna add a pinch or 2 of salt. Now, my secret ingredients to the sauce here is honey. I don't like this without it, because it really has that strong bitter taste from all of the chili powder. So I like to balance it out with some honey. And I don't know how much I put in there. I just taste it. I go by my palate. So this is really where your palate comes into play here. So that's where you really kind of taste it and you adjust it to how you prefer it. It just really kind of helps balance out that smokiness. Now, if you wanted to, you could add some adobes to this, some of the peppers, the smoked peppers, and that would give it really a smokier flavor to it. But I don't have any of those today, so we are just going with this enchilada sauce as is. All right, so that's down to moderate heat there. All right, so we're just gonna let that stand for just a few minutes, and then I'll come over and taste the sauce and see what we need to add as far as honey. Now, honey, if you have it in your cabinet and it has crystallized, you can throw this in the microwave for a few seconds at a time and warm it up. This one had crystallized because it had been sitting too long. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with the honey. It just means that sugar crystals have formed in there. So you just microwave it and it comes right back to its normal self. All right, so that's cooking right there. And come over here with me. All right, so remember that rotisserie chicken that we used half of for our Cobb salad? Voila, we've got the rest of our rotisserie chicken here. And I've just kind of shredded it up and cut it into some pieces here. You want everything that's gonna be a nice bite size. You don't want anything too large. You are wrapping it in the tortilla shells here. And I like to use the flour tortillas. Personally, I'm just a flour tortilla kind of girl, but you can use corn if you want. They're just a little bit more to work with. All right, so that's going there, and next my vegetables. I used some fresh corn on the cob and just shucked it and cut that off the cob there and threw it on my pan. So we're using a lot of our seasonal vegetables here. And really just use what you like. If you don't like the vegetable, don't put it in there, because then you're not going to eat the dinner. But this is a healthy way of incorporating some vegetables into your kids' diet. So I had some zucchini, some orange bell pepper, some green beans, some corn, and some sweet potatoes. And I just, like I said, cut all that up. Oh, and some onions. Of course, you gotta have onions in there. And then just oven roasted it. Now this is a great dish to make for a crowd. It also refrigerates really well, and it's great for leftovers. To me, they're even better the second day because that enchilada sauce is bloomed. But I guess I'm biased because it's my food. There we go. All right, so we've got all of our meat and all of our vegetables in there. And we're just gonna give this a nice stir. Next we have our pan, and I've already greased it a little bit, put a little spray in there. And here are my flour tortillas. Now they're not the burrito size. It says large. I don't want to go with anything too small, and I don't want to go with a huge burrito size either. So I'm just going to put that in the pan, and I can get about 5 or 6 good size enchiladas in here. Now the enchilada sauce, you can use it as a base for an enchilada soup, or you can do it for beef enchiladas. It's really versatile. You can do eggs and tortillas and enchiladas. You know, it's really up to you, but it will sit in the refrigerator for about 2 weeks if you put it in a container. Oops, I'm making a mess, but that's a good mess. My daddy always says it ain't good if you don't make a mess. Okay. And we've got nothing but good wholesome vegetables in here. Good clean protein. And if you want to get your kids in the kitchen, this is a great way for them to help. They can help stuff the tortillas with the vegetables. If you want to make it purely vegetarian, you can do that. I would add some black beans in there for some protein. It's really up to you as far as what you want to put in there. This is your dish. I think I'm gonna try shoving one more in there. Let's see if I can do that. Okay. Turn my sauce down and roll it. There we go. All right, so now we have our tortillas stuffed with our chicken and roasted vegetables mixture. And let's go over and finish our sauce, okay? All right, so here you go. You can see that we've got slightly thicker sauce. Coats the back of the spoon here. I'm gonna try it. Okay, yeah, definitely needs a little bit of honey in there. All right, so this kind of cuts that bitterness from all the chili powder. Now my temperature is preheated to 400 degrees. And once I pour the sauce over the tortillas, then I can let it sit for a few minutes, and then I can pop it in the oven, and I'll let it cook until it's nice and bubbly in the center, which is about 20-25 minutes. All right, that's perfect. exactly what I want. All right. Here we go. So you just want to pour this over your tortillas. And it looks like a lot of sauce, and I might not use it all. It will soak in to the tortillas, so it's not a bad thing. And then you have some extra sauce to spoon over your leftovers tomorrow. There is our chicken enchiladas. And of course, you gotta have a little cheese in there. All right, and that is dinner. So we're gonna put this in the oven now and let it bake, like I said, 400 degrees for about 20-25 minutes until it's nice and bubbly. And then serve it up. You can put some sour cream on it, some avocados, some green onions, whatever you'd like. And stay tuned for this week. I will have a easy dessert for your 4th of July, something that you can put together with just minimal ingredients and yet thrill everybody around you. So hope you all have a great 4th and be safe. Talk to you later.